Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. So I'm here with the 5th update for my Pan That palette for my Urban Decay Naked 2 palette. And I'll show you what my palette looks like currently. And there is one major difference from last month, and that is this shade here. So previously, this was an empty pan. It was the shade Booty Call, which I had previously used up. But I depotted the shade Smog from my Naked palette. It was my favorite shade that I had left in that palette. So I wanted to get some more use out of it, so I decided to move it over to this palette. I did a declutter. It was about 2 weeks ago, and then I did a little quick update after my declutter where I was just showing that I had depotted the shade from my Naked palette to this palette. So the palette looks a little bit different, but besides that, everything else is pretty much the same. I still have pan on the same shades I had previously, so Foxy, Suspect, and YDK. And I don't have a new, the pan has expanded. Specifically, I've been using Suspect and YDK quite a bit, so you can see there's some more pan in YDK. I haven't used Foxy a ton, but that's where my palette stands currently. And honestly, over this past month, I really have been focusing on just a few of the shades. I've been focusing on Suspect. That's kind of been my everyday shade, my like everyday weekday type of shade. And I've also used YDK. I was using Foxy as a brow bone highlight. And I still have been. It doesn't work perfectly, so I have been using another shade for my brow bone highlight that just works better. It's more matte, like sort of cream color, so I haven't gotten as much use out of Foxy. Everything else, I think I used Smog once, but like Smog isn't really technically part of the Naked 2 palette. I'm using Chopper today. That's one of my favorite shades from this palette, so I have gotten some use out of that. I may have used Half Baked once, I'm not quite sure. But I've really just kind of been focusing on the shades that have pan on them, and then everything else I haven't really been gravitating to. But that's what my palette looks like currently. And I kind of wanted to talk about sort of my current thoughts with this palette. So I've been panning this now for 5 months, and you know, I've hit pan in YDK. I think Suspect I already had pan in, and Foxy I already had pan in, but kind of the progress with this is slow moving, and kind of my original plan with this was to pan it this year. I started this in June, and then to pan it all through next year, but I'm currently kind of wanting to change up my plans for that. I'm kind of at the point that I want to use up the shades I have pan on currently. But the rest of the shades, I don't foresee myself using it up. Like, if I go through each of the shades. So, Foxy I definitely want to use up. I've already hit pan on it, made some really good progress with it. Half Baked, I use occasionally. It's just never a shade that I'm drawn to. So, I never see myself even hitting pan on this one. Smog, for my Naked palette. This one I really love. It's just getting pretty old, but it is a very beautiful shade, but I don't think I'd really use this one up. I only use this more on like the weekends when I want to do sort of a more dramatic eye. It's definitely not an everyday type of color for me, so I don't see myself using it up with the use of it, but I do really love the shade. Chopper's kind of similar. It's a gorgeous shade. It's one of my favorites in this palette, but it is a more glittery shade. And I just don't really want to wear like a super glittery shade with fallout to work. So it's more of like a weekend shade. So with the use that I have of it, I don't think I ever would really use this one up, even though it is a gorgeous shade. Tease, I use this one occasionally. I'm pretty simple when it comes to my eyeshadow. I use like a brow bone highlight and an all over the lid shade. And I like something with a little bit of shimmer. So Tease is pretty, it's super pretty, but it's just nothing that I would use on a daily basis, so I don't see myself using up that one. Then there's Snakebite. Snakebite is, again, something I only wear on the weekends, and Snakebite and Smog are pretty similar, but honestly, I would always pick Smog. I think Smog is just a lot prettier than Snakebite. So Snakebite doesn't get a lot of use. Definitely nothing I'd use up. Suspect, one of my everyday shades. I really like this shade. Definitely would use this one up. Pistol. Pistol's pretty. I use this one occasionally as well. It's sort of similar to me in my mind as Half-Baked. Like, I use it occasionally, but it's nothing that I gravitate to every day, so I never would use up this shade. Verb. Verb is also super pretty. I do like it as like a wash of color all over the lid. This is definitely one I need to get more use out of, but with my current progress on it, which is barely anything, I don't really foresee myself actually using this one up, but I definitely would love to get more use out of it. Decay is a shade I love for every day. I think of all the shades in this palette, it's definitely my favorite. It's a really beautiful shade, so I definitely would use that up. And then the two dark shades at the end, I never see myself getting anywhere on. I barely use Busted. I'm just not into super dark shades. And then Blackout I use occasionally. If I use like a black liner, I might use it to set my liner, but that is very infrequent, so I never see myself getting very far with either of those shades. So kind of coming to that conclusion, like I really want to use up the 3 shades that I have pan on. That in total I would have used up 4 shades from this palette. And for me, that kind of makes the palette worth the money. If I compare like the price of the palette versus the singles, you really would have to use up a little over like 3 shades to kind of make it worth the money versus buying the singles. So that's kind of how I'm feeling with this. I definitely want to keep using this palette for the next month. Try to get the most use I can out of kind of the shades that I already have progress on, maybe use some of the other shades. And then I think I want to go on a hiatus with this project. I'm not sure what I will do next year. I might come back with this, but I really kind of want to use some of my other eyeshadow palettes. Like, I love the idea of panning a palette, and I think some people do it so brilliantly. But for me, I'm pretty simple with my eyeshadow. I do wear eyeshadow every day, but I do really simple looks, and there's just colors that I'm not really comfortable wearing on like an everyday sort of basis. So I kind of have the ones that I use, but I don't make progress super quickly. So if I were to, I just can't see myself actually panning this palette. Like, realistically, I'm not going to be able to pan this, and I don't really have the desire to. I love the palette. I love being able to play around with it. Like, when I first started to pan that palette, like, I was using all the shades and discovering shades and combinations, and I really enjoy that. But now I'm kind of to the point where I'm just using a few of the shades, and I think I would be better using up the shades that I want to in like a Project 10 pan, where I'm just kind of focusing on a few of the shades for a smaller amount of time. I think that would work better. That's kind of what I did with my Naked palette this year. I used up 2 of the shades, Toasted and Sidecar, and I was able to use them up just in a Project 10 pan. So I think for next year, I will put the 3 shades with the pan that I want to use up. I think I'll just put those maybe in Project 10 pans, and then I'll just kind of focus on those shades. I think that would work out better for me, and then it would also allow me to use some of my palettes that have just kind of been sitting around. Like, specifically, I really want to use my Naked 3 palette. I've used this a few times since starting to pan this, or even in this year, because I've kind of been focusing first on the Naked and then Naked 2. But this palette is gorgeous with the rose gold shades, and I just would love to get some more use out of it. And then also my Modern Renaissance palette as well. Like, I got this for my birthday. I still have it in the box. I have used it occasionally. I'm trying to keep it clean, but I don't want this to sit around and get old, where I'm trying to use up even older makeup. Like, I want to use the stuff that kind of excites me, which are these palettes, and have fun with them. So I'm not sure how long I'll kind of take a hiatus from panning, or kind of how I'm going to approach it next year, but I will use this for another month, see how much progress I can make with it. I will have an update in December, and then I'll probably take a few months of focusing on my other palettes. You know, I might do like use one palette for a month, try to use all the shades and have fun with it, kind of have the joy of using my eyeshadow palettes that I did when I first started panning this. You know, like one month I might use the Modern Renaissance and then use the Naked 3. I also have my Makeup Forever palette, which I haven't even used, I think, this whole year because I've been trying to use up other stuff. But I would love to try to play around with this a little bit. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. Is Pan That palette is awesome. I love watching Pan That palettes, and people are super creative. But for me, I just know that I'm the type of person that would only use up so many shades in an eyeshadow palette. Like, I use up so many shades. I use the sort of everyday colors, or like the brow bone highlight that I would use every day, and like the all over the lid shades. But like some of the darker shades or the more glittery shades, I just know that I'm not going to use them up. And I'm fine with that. I've kind of made that like conclusion about my eyeshadow wearing habits and how I like to use my makeup. So I think for me, Pan That palette just isn't realistic in the long term. I think, you know, I don't know what you would call a project where you're using an eyeshadow palette maybe for like 3 months at a time and really discovering it and having fun with it, but then moving on to another one. Like, I know people do like one palette 1 month, so maybe I would do that. Like, I used to do that a few years ago. I'd like rotate my eyeshadow palettes every month. Like, maybe I would do that. Maybe for a few months I'm kind of rotating eyeshadow palettes, and then I focus on one. Like, maybe like for 2 months I focus on, I kind of play around with these palettes, or use one for 1 month, one for the other, and then for a few months I'll go back to focusing on this, or have this in a Project 10 pan, and then in between doing the Project 10 pan, then I'm playing around with palettes. I haven't really decided of how I'm going to kind of use up those shades and also use my other palettes, but I know that I'm kind of getting to the end of the road of like solely using my Naked 2 palette. I just really want to play around with my other stuff, and really that's what I wanted to say. I know it's kind of disappointing that I'm not kind of following this through and using up a whole palette, but I just come to the conclusion that it's just not realistic for me. But I definitely do want to use some of the shades, so you'll definitely be seeing this at some point again in the future. Definitely, I will still work on it for another month. I'll have my kind of last video for my Project 10, or for my Pan That palette, and then we'll kind of see into next year what I choose to do with this palette. And I definitely will be using up some of the shades, but we'll just see kind of in what format or what type of project I will use them up in. So that is my update. I know kind of a longer update, but I kind of just want to talk about my thoughts about the palette and my kind of how I want to use it. And, you know, I feel like everyone, like, you can start a project and be very committed to wanting to do it, but I feel like at the point that it's not working for you, you kind of have to figure out an alternative plan, and it's okay to change your mind. I mean, this is just makeup, this is just for fun, it's not super serious, so I want to still have fun with what I'm doing and, you know, enjoy the products that I have. So that's kind of what it comes down to. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.